kind of like when we said, why integrate? You know, when I asked that woman why integration, was like, wow, it's a really good question. Why integrate? Uh, and you know, a lot of people wouldn't say, I would say it, but why integrate? To fulfill my mission. Why integrate? To live true to my calling. That's how I would say it. Uh, but I don't know how people would answer why integrate. But however they would answer it would be illuminating to what they're up to. So then the first question is why, and this is we're saying, why are we saying, or why is a calling important? Well, if I want to live an aligned life, if I want to, and you know, that's a question people would have to say, well, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to live an aligned life? But let's not go back that way. Let's say if I wanted to live an aligned life, if I wanted to live an integrated life, that is to say, I want my life to fulfill something, which is different than I want to accomplish something. So people can accomplish all kinds of things, but not necessarily have those accomplishments fulfill something. You follow that? So then we would start at the end of my life, and I got this pretty powerfully for myself. Not pretty powerfully, I got it powerfully for myself. In the last 3 or 4 years of my father's life, he was living in the south of France, and you know, every time I saw him, he would be less and less. His health would be more and more diminished. So I was never sure whether that was going to be the last time I saw him. And you know, he was always a pretty open guy. So we started to have dialogues, which luckily I taped, about his death. And he was fearing death. Now, this is a guy for whom, as long as I've known him, he was fairly illuminated about, I'm not my mind, I'm not my body, I'm not my thoughts. I'm a spiritual, and I thought it was very interesting that he spent his life talking about that, but at the end of his life he was fearing death. How come? If you're not any of these things, how come? Well, as we started to have the conversation, there were two things. One, a funny kind of thing. He said, I read this article in Scientific Magazine, Scientific American, and it said, you know, when you're dead, that's it. No, he said, and then I believed it. Now, this is after he's read, you know, 1,000 books on the exact opposite, and he believed this. So that one kind of disappeared pretty quickly, you know. But then it started to get more real for him, was that he didn't fulfill what he knew his life was for. And you know, when you're 60, you still got a runway. When you're 70, yeah, even Picasso was painting at 70. When you're 80, you know, Matisse had to tie the broom handle to the paintbrush, right? When you're 90, all there is resolution. You're not going to do anything. You've just got to resolve, contextualize it. But I found that really amazing, that after all of the work he'd done, he was not fulfilled. And one way of saying it, I could say, Jason, is that he wasn't an embodiment of the things he was studying. that they didn't connect that way in a deep way until he was at the end of his life. So that was a really profound thing for me to see, and then say, well, if you could bring that runway back to when you're 40 or you're 50 or you're 60, and you really examine at the end of my life, what do I want to authentically say my life fulfilled? Now, do you have to say that? No, you don't. But if I want to live something that's not what I've inherited, if I want to live something that I'm creating, and then I'm creating it for the community in which I'm living, the big community, the humanity, it's got to be created. And it's got to be something that's so real for me that I'm compelled to live true to it, even in the face of chaos and breakdowns and temptations and failures and I don't care anymore and who gives a crap, and I'm just gonna survive. So then how would you go to work on distinguishing that? Well,